On this week's edition of Heel to the Face podcast, me and Brandon will talk New Japan Wrestling Wrestlekingdom live from this past weekend as we get ready for Royal Rumble 2020.
Big show, Usos.
Big show, Usos. They're back. Royal Rumble's on the horizon, plus Tessa Blanchard, first women's champion.
Silence your cell phones. Hold your applause. And tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know?
That was fucking
Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So this is the Heel to the Face podcast. You can find it every single week at Heel to the Face on Twitter. You can find myself at KRock Jared. You can find my partner, Brandon Clements, at Icebreaker21. A lot to talk about this week. Last week we did our best of the year review. Now we're back into the regular grind of wrestling, and crazy enough, it's WrestleMania season. I guess that's what happens when the calendar turns over. It just immediately turns into WrestleMania season. The Royal Rumble is on the horizon. And I think the first thing we could probably talk about before we get into WWE is the big New Japan Wrestling show.
You mean shows, right? The
shows,
weekend. Yeah, weekend.
Shows, the weekend of New Japan Wrestling. Just a few talking points, I guess, to bring up from the events. One thing about New Japan Wrestling from a perspective of a fan who's not the biggest New Japan Wrestling fan, who's just kind of the casual onlooker, is the presentation year in and year out seems to stay the same. I feel like WrestleManias, they look different. I mean, mainly because they have different sets, but New Japan Wrestling, whether it be the camera angles, the shots, it looks like the same event. It doesn't look like upgraded. The pyro doesn't get better, any of that kind of stuff. It looks like Wrestle Kingdoms from the past. I think it has pretty much an identical set. But Wrestle Kingdom, 2 nights. One thing I guess I want to bring up outside of the wrestling also as well is the disparity in attendance. What I mean by that is the first night sold out. Both nights, I believe, ticket prices were the same. The first night completely sold out, 40,000 people at the Tokyo Dome. The second night drew more or less 30,000 people, which I felt was kind of strange because of the fact that, in my eyes, the second night would be the bigger night.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel you know what I mean? Like, it's like the final, but I guess my perspective is, what draws more? I think they're both sellouts, but what do you think would draw more or be a hotter ticket, let's say in the world of NCAA basketball? Let's equate to those 2-night kind of things. The first night, which is more action, or the second night, which is the championship itself. I think the first night draws a lot because it has, more people involved because there's 4 teams. So you have people traveling from 4. And I guess the way to equate that into New Japan Wrestling and why I think the first night would draw more is because it's the first night. People go out and they bought the tickets for the first night. It's got the guaranteed matches. The second night, you don't know the main event until after the first night.
Well, plus you get Chris Jericho in the second night too. Like Chris Jericho is kind of a big name. But
I feel like the main events for the first night, you knew your entire card.
True.
The second night was a lot contingent on the first night. Same with the NCAA championship. You just know it's a championship game. The first night, when you buy a ticket, at least you know exactly what you're getting.
Here's what I was thinking though. Aside from Chris Jericho, Thunder Liger's last match was on Sunday. That's weird.
That was probably the thing you knew you were getting on the second night is Thunder Liger's very last match, in which he did the New Japan Wrestling thing, the more prestigious, traditional thing of going out with his eyes facing the lights on his back as he was defeated. That's what you do in the world of professional wrestling when it comes to the, the traditional, the respectable way to go out. But yeah, I felt like if the first night was sold out, I thought for sure the second night was going to be sold out, but less people came to the second night, which makes me feel like this 2-night proposition was a failure because your more important matches, your big buildup was in front of less people. I guess in WrestleMania terms, if it was 2 different shows, the women's match that you were saying is highlighting WrestleMania would have been in front of 10,000 less people.
But here's the thing, from a business perspective, It's 2 nights.
So 70,000 saw this. Yes.
70,000 saw it. I bet you a lot of it was crossover. A lot of it was day 1, day 2 anyways.
But
so regardless,
ticket prices,
70,000
tickets.
So New Japan is very happy with that. I mean, I know they probably wanted a sellout across the board, but 70,000 people, 70,000 different ticket buyers, they're making good money. Plus, when you're going to, when you got the Chris Jerichos, you got the John Moxleys, you got some good names. You got to pay them. You got to make some money. So having 70,000 tickets sold, or give or take sold, you got to have enough money to pay all your talent and all these things. So to me it makes business sense. I'm not that down on it as much. Even I know there's a disparity between 40 and 30,000. So on an average, the average weekend was 35,000. Not terrible.
Yes. Yeah, and there were still big shows nonetheless. I guess my thing as a American New Japan Wrestling fan who was introduced to this pretty much by the Kenny Omegas of the world a few years ago, the main event was pretty much, the main event of the second night was pretty much some people I'm very familiar with because of the fact that these were the people I was introduced as opponents of Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks in the past. It delivered, but Undertaker made a very good point a couple years ago when he was doing an interview about giving the fans too much of the same thing until it becomes the same. Obviously there's a reason why people out there who are in the NBA make $1 million and they complain like they don't make enough money, because now that $1 million is a normal thing, they get used to it, they get complacent. And for a wrestling fan like myself to watch that kind of wrestling, I guess, with New Japan Wrestling, night after night after night, match after match, you start to get complacent. So by the time I reached match number 16, which was, the main event, night number 2 for all the gold, it's really good wrestling, but we've seen really good wrestling for now 10 hours. There's really nothing to kind of, give us something new that we haven't seen yet that's really going to make me stand up. I saw the wrestling fans in New Japan going crazy for a lot of these matches, and Kevin Kelly, what a move. But, I guess the thing is, once you've seen it for now 9 hours straight, you've seen the great technical wrestling, you've seen the great flips.
Yep.
I felt the John Moxley match. He had a Texas Death match on night number 1. I felt the fact that he knew he probably had a match on night number 2 against Juice Robinson. That wasn't nearly as entertaining as the match he had against Kenny Omega at AEW. I felt it was a little tame, but so, a little too much of a good thing. 10 hours of 25-minute matches of, technical wrestling gets a little.
I'm going to say this. There's a couple notes I want to make. Takahashi had a great weekend. He came back from a severe injury that almost ended his career. He's 30 years old. He had a great weekend. I think that's one name that is kind of, I would consider maybe a breakout star for the weekend for New Japan. I think he's young enough at 30 where he can be the flag bearer. You have Kenta doing
that was
nice
probably
things.
The highlight to me. Kenta coming back at the end of everything, kind of challenging Naito to. Well, I don't think he challenged him anything, just pretty much coming out making his appearance. But that was just a highlight to me for the fact that we saw him just get so wasted. Who in WWE as
awful.
Tommy.
Yeah, that was bad.
Completely wasted in WWE, and they hyped him up like a big name, like a Shinsuke Nakamura, and then they didn't treat him like that at all.
But he was getting a little bit of a pop and then got hurt, and that was it. That was like pretty much the last we heard from him, and it was very disappointing. It makes a lot of folks that are over in Japan not want to come here, because it's like you're a megastar in Japan and then you come to the States in WWE and you're literally like nothing. You're kind of enhancement talent just about. It's not ideal. There's some guys over in New Japan that I'd love to see here. I'd love to see Fit Finley's son here. He's a great tag team wrestler in New Japan. Obviously there's a little pull there with Fit working for WWE, so maybe we'll see him there. Takahashi is I think he's got a great future in New Japan. I don't see him coming to WWE. Why would he? He's doing well in New Japan, so I don't see that happening, especially after Kenta, had a terrible run in WWE. So it's, overall, there's a lot of matches. I think it was in the teens, right? I think it was 16, 18.
Well, it was like 8 matches a night. Yeah.
It was a lot of matches. It was a long show.
Plus pre-show on both nights. So it was
a lot of coverage.
It was a lot of matches, and I just feel that I hope next year they go back to one day. And if they want to change it up maybe from a perspective of, one thing we really haven't seen a lot in Wrestle Kingdom, I think because they try to be too grand, is, cage ladder match. I don't know the history when it comes to Japanese wrestling with that kind of stuff, but that might be a nice little switch up other than the 2 nights, is really start, they did a Texas death match And it was hardcore and it was cool, but that's kind of the only thing. That's what's nice about WrestleMania is they do try to, as many fans hate it, they do try to do a few different things where it's not just wrestling. They try to break it up a little bit, even when it comes to having a musical performance. I think that's what New Japan Wrestling needs maybe for next year is if they're going to do 2 nights, you really got to start throwing in some different elements other than just it. I think 5 hours of wrestling.
I'll say
5
this,
hours of wrestling.
To that point, I think New Japan really hangs their hat on just good wrestling. One night would suffice of just solid matches that we're looking forward to. Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off here. Do you think there's a 2-night show next year?
No, I don't. I don't think next year. I think they did it this year because they have what used to be the second night, now the third night of that New Year's Dash, which is essentially their Raw after WrestleMania. That they treat really highly. I just don't see it. Look at it from this perspective but the 4 competitors that were in the Final 4, I guess, for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship and for the Heavyweight Championship. There are 2 matches on one night, and there are 2 matches on night number 2. That is nearly like 3 hours in itself, just seeing those 4 competitors.
I mean, they're all really good, though. Okada and Naito are really good.
Because the 2 main events were about 30 minutes apiece. The main event for all the belts and the main event for just the one belt. So, just seeing those 3 guys, essentially Okada, Naito, Jay White, that was just a lot.
Cool. Naito had a great weekend.
Naito took home all the gold.
Yeah, he's got all the gold. But Okada is still, regardless of having titles or no titles, is one of the best.
Jon Moxley, he stayed with gold. He didn't do that kind of thing where we thought maybe he'd lose the gold and really just commit to AEW full time. He's committing to AEW full time, but we thought maybe he would get rid of the gold and kind of phase his way out, but he's not.
I'm just curious.
Keeping himself in both.
Yeah, I'm curious though, because remember when he lost the title because he couldn't make it? It was like a travel problem.
Yeah, there was the tsunami issue. He couldn't. Yeah, and then he got the title back on night number 1 here, and then defended it on night number 2 against Juice Robinson.
Yeah, there's a few in New Japan Wrestling guys that are guys and gals that you might see in a WWE roster very soon. So they've already reached out.
And
to
Moxley was back over on AEW this past week. He turned down being in the inner circle with Chris Jericho. He kind of hinted that he was going to join, and then turned it down as well. So both those guys from a big weekend in Japan back to the States, returning to the storyline. I do like how Jon Moxley said this week on AEW. He said he's been thinking about it all week. Well, I hope he wasn't thinking about it all week because he had 2 big matches earlier in the week. They're probably more important than joining the inner circle since last time we saw him.
Yeah, no, and I gotta say, speaking of Chris Jericho, what are your thoughts on him winning that match? I don't think it was a surprise. I was hoping he was going to lose.
I think he won the match kind of partially to the reason why I thought Jon Moxley would lose the match, and that's less spillover into AEW. I felt that the stipulation was I would defend the belt against you in AEW. So I felt from an AEW perspective, seeing his opponent is an AEW wrestler, he'd win the match. He'd kind of keep that storyline going, but there'd be actual less ramifications, meaning that AEW wouldn't have to then fulfill bringing him over and having him actually face in a match. It was more just like a quick gimmick. It's like the gimmicks you see at house shows, where they're
True.
They bring a celebrity out real quick and they're like, if you win this match on Monday Night Raw, I'll give you a title shot or something. And then they obviously lose because on Monday Night Raw, they're not going to be there. It's like it never happened. So AEW never has to acknowledge that this match happened with Chris Jericho because he won. If he lost, they would have to acknowledge this match because it would then bleed over into their storylines.
Let me ask you this. Would you have liked to see Chris Jericho lose, though? Here's the thing. The thing that
Not necessarily, because I thought that was kind of... I thought that was kind of predictable. As soon as he won, I understood why he won, but I thought he was going to lose because I thought it was going to bleed over into AEW.
I thought the relationship with AEW and New Japan was solid enough where we'd see that crossover, but maybe it's not. I don't know. It's hard to say. Obviously it's not a full great partnership or relationship because of that match. Because as soon as Chris Jericho would have lost that match, well, then we know, okay, New Japan and AEW are in bed together, so to speak, and working as a duo to maybe put a little more oomph against WWE. But I'm sure they have a decent relationship because they let a lot of AEW wrestlers go and be part of the card. So it can't be that bad. I was just kind of curious. I was kind of hoping Jericho would drop the match there.
Well, if you dropped the match, then they'd have the rematch in AEW for the belt. Moving on to WWE. The biggest news all week in WWE didn't happen in a wrestling ring. It happened at a factory, a Good Humor factory, when it was announced that minus the sticks, the ice cream bars essentially, in a more different way, are coming back. The thing that CM Punk demanded for a very long time ago before he left WWE, now he's back. You think he has any influence of why Good Humor is going to make us some WWE ice cream sandwiches with our favorite superstars imprinted on them? They're not the exact ice cream bars, but either way, you're going to have Randy Orton, you're going to have John Cena. Good Humor, the WWE is giving us some ice cream sandwiches. I guess my question is, now that we have them, was it as big a deal? I mean, it just felt like CM Punk made it kind of fun at the time.
Yeah,
but I don't really need to go out and buy these ice cream sandwiches.
I'm not that hyped about it, to be honest with you. I mean, if that's our biggest news this week in WWE.
I mean, aren't there already WWE fruit snacks? And I'm not buying those like left and right.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
Wait, they make fruit snacks?
I think they do. I think they make a lot of WWE. Like WWE is actually on a lot of snacks. If you want to get anything, go to FYE in the places. We currently don't have one here in Syracuse, but go to the places that still have FYE that have transformed from the FYE that you know into it more of like a pop culture place. That's what they sell. And they've got the actual Bootio cereal. They've got, I think, a big gummy WWE Championship. Those things are kind of more unique to me. This ice cream bar thing, it just seemed like, CM Punk asked for it, and it was like a lot of hype around it to see if they would actually do it. The ice cream bars themselves, while they were good, I mean, because ice cream is delicious, I felt like I wasn't actually really missing out on that.
Now, let me ask you, is transitioning to like Raw and SmackDown this past week, what were your biggest takeaways?
So Brock Lesnar is joining the Royal Rumble, and as a big Brock Lesnar fan, I'm a little disappointed. I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about it, and I guess
stupid.
I understand. I get what they're doing, but as somebody who's going to be, hopefully, it's not, the T's aren't all signed yet, but hopefully attending the Royal Rumble in Houston in just about 2 weeks, I guess my big thing is I
want to go to sleep. That's what I'm going to do now.
What I like about the Royal Rumble is for example, attending last year, the Royal Rumble had about 5 matches. None of them were Lucha House Party. None of them were, a tag team. We had some pre-show matches, but the card was World Championship, Women's Championship, I think a tag team championship, but it was a interesting, like WrestleMania style nonetheless, because it was the first time Miz and Shane McMahon were teaming up. So it was a special attraction match. And then Royal Rumble. There was no throwaway. There was no, U.S. title matches. There was no IC title matches. There was no, just feuds, 6-man tags, because these guys aren't getting along too well, like we might see, with Seth Rollins teaming up with AOP, against, Big Show and stuff like that. There was none of that. It was just title matches, world title matches, and the Royal Rumble. And that's what I like about the Royal Rumble. Like the first match on the card can either be the Royal Rumble or it could be a world title match. Which is cool. Yeah. So with Brock Lesnar being in the Royal Rumble, that means that the world title will not be on the line at the Royal Rumble. And I can understand that in one way, because I guess it seems to be a foregone conclusion that Brock Lesnar is going to still be champion at WrestleMania. He's not going to lose the belt at the Royal Rumble, and he's not going to lose the belt anytime soon. No. So this, I guess, sets up a chance for him to start what the storyline will be for who he faces for the world title. I don't see him winning the Royal Rumble, because then how the hell does that work?
I got one for you. Here's my hot take for today's show. Drew McIntyre is on fire right now. Wouldn't it be cool if Brock Lesnar is, towards the end of the match, he's getting, he's one of the final, individuals in the ring, and Drew McIntyre hits him with a Claymore and tosses him out the ring or something. You build up a Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre match at WrestleMania, something like that.
He can get eliminated. The thing is, Brock Lesnar he goes off of being very intimidating, and he can beat anybody. But the problem in the Royal Rumble is that doesn't work no matter who you are, because we've seen from the Big Shows and the Kanes and the Undertakers of the world that you get enough people in there, you can be eliminated. It's no disrespect to Brock Lesnar. It's not going to make him look any weak if he loses the Royal Rumble, because that's the thing about the Royal Rumble is you're just getting thrown over the top rope. You're not being defeated, pinned to the mat, like Rey Mysterio not getting hit with 619 after 619 after 619. Like, could they really beat Brock Lesnar? No. Like, so him being in the Royal Rumble doesn't mean, like Jerry Lawler would always say when Big Show would be in there, like, oh, this is my new favorite. Like, because he's big and who's going to beat him. Like, you don't have to beat him. You just got to throw him over the top rope. I mean, in every match, even the ones where Brock is super dominant, he can get thrown over the top rope by anybody.
Well, here's the thing, too. Brock Lesnar's going to be obviously one of the favorites, probably the favorite to win the Royal Rumble match. But if you get enough folks in the ring, you're right. You get enough competitors in the ring, they can gang up on him and throw him out.
And I guess my thing was when the announcement was made, I thought that the big thing that Paul Heyman was going to mention, he said, here's the big part of the news that he's joining the Royal Rumble, and when he said he's going to be number 1, I thought the big thing was he was putting the belt on the line. I thought that meant
like the Roman Reigns effect.
Yes, I thought that meant the belt was going to be on the line. Then there you go. That's an interesting aspect. That's something new, because he said, let's do something new that, hasn't been done before. And I said, he's going to, put the belt on the line. There we go. That way, then it might be more interesting to see him win, because win or lose, even as a Brock Lesnar fan, it doesn't really matter to me, because he's going to leave with the belt and he's not going to look any weaker either way. If he loses, if he gets eliminated first or if he gets eliminated at the end, I don't.
Does it really matter?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, because he's going to leave with the belt and he's not going to look weaker nonetheless, because all he's got to do is get thrown over the top rope.
Who do you think besides Brock Lesnar would be considered a favorite at this point for the Royal Rumble match? Who do you think could win it?
It's kind of strange, but could Roman Reigns win it? Now I feel Roman Reigns is on a little bit of a streak, in the sense that he can now be a fan favorite, quote unquote, to win, that he hasn't been before. So you have that aspect setting up. Maybe could we have a Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar match? I don't know.
I got one for you. CM Punk comes in at number 30.
And a lot of people are saying that, but I guess
cool.
Here's the thing I'm saying about CM Punk when it comes to the Royal Rumble. Okay? What's that? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. When it comes to the Royal Rumble, we're on fool me 15.
That's
so CM Punk sounds awesome, but everything that anyone's ever said, only once or twice in my entire life, in the 30+ year history of the Royal Rumble, has there been a real AJ Styles up there as a real cool surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble. Other than that, we're always disappointed. 30's going to hit.
We're going to get the Hurricane. The Hurricane's coming through.
It's going to be, R-Truth at number 30. Something stupid, it's like, even when it's at a stadium. I was there last year. The Royal Rumble was in a stadium. I thought in front of 45,000 people, you're going to pull out something big. This is going to be awesome. And you still didn't. You still just pulled out, I mean, you had Jeff Jarrett. You had a few cool little surprises. But, CM Punks of the world weren't winning the Royal Rumble. Bray Wyatt didn't make his return at the Rumble. Even in front of a stadium, I thought, hey, we're going to get pyro, and we didn't. We're going to get some really awesome, like, WrestleMania crazy surprise entrant who's going to win this whole thing. The Rock's coming back because they're in front of 45,000. Stone Cold's going to be in this. No, it was just a Royal Rumble as if it was in front of a regular arena. It was a typical Royal Rumble. You had a big crowd, but there wasn't anything special about last year's Royal Rumble that really stuck out. I felt the one in Philly might have actually been better. In the women's Royal Rumble itself, too, there wasn't anything special about that either.
No. Getting back to Raw and SmackDown, the Big Show making his return. That was cool after, 2 years?
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
It's so funny with the Big Show coming back, because you never know when he's done. We talked about this before, too. Big Show having a big match, to go out. And I don't know if he's necessarily going to do that, because he goes away and you just think that he is out. You're like, he's done.
I didn't think he was coming back, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, there was that whole thing. I thought he was going to take on Shaquille O'Neal a couple of years ago. That never happened. And then he just, nothing happened with the Big Show in general.
That was cool, though. Samoa Joe and KO had him as the third partner. That was cool. I thought it was a cool match. Big Show looked pretty good from what I saw there. I mean, they kind of protected him behind a 6-man tag. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was in for a full 30 minutes in the ring. So they're protecting him, which is the right thing to do with a guy his age. Another duo came back. We had another return. Usos came back to save the fam.
From what the Uso Penitentiary, more like the real penitentiary.
Yeah, they're back. Also very true. The Vince McMahon doghouse too.
Yeah. So the Usos are back. Have they really been missed? Have you missed them too much?
Yeah, I've missed them.
I missed them because I think SmackDown, when it comes to their tag team division, is a little bit weaker than Raw's tag team division.
Yeah, the Usos bring legitimacy to the tag team division, so I think it's a good move to bring them back. Obviously, Vince has them out of the doghouse, at least at this point, because he tied him in with Roman Reigns, so obviously they're doing something right at this point. What's that mean for Naomi? I mean, we haven't seen her, so is she on the way back?
I think her and the Usos, especially too, they're pretty separated. I don't think that's much not separated in life, but I think that's separated when it comes to storyline perspective. I haven't seen anything tied together too much with those guys, especially when the Usos were around last time. I felt they kept their storylines pretty far away, and even their involvement in wrestling, pretty separate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious because I know they brought them back. Are they going to bring her back soon? Is what I'm thinking. Do they bring her back? For at the Royal Rumble?
And there's a few. I feel like when it comes to the women's Royal Rumble, I feel we're going to see like an Ember Moon make her return.
Yeah, she's been on for a while.
Yeah, she's been gone for a while.
Nia Jax,
but
that's close because she had double ACL, so that might be too close. I know
she's not going to pull the John Cena.
I mean, if she does, more power to her. But I mean, double ACL, that's a lot. That's really tough to come back from.
So I mean, the Royal Rumble is less than 2 weeks away. Are you excited for this Royal Rumble like you are typically?
Yeah.
More excited, less excited?
I'm just average. I'm right in the middle. I'm not like over the top excited. I mean, the only way I'll be over the top excited is if like CM Punk like comes back like out of the blue. Other than that, I've already tempered my expectations. I've always learned, through the years that all these big names that are coming through, they're not going to show up at Royal Rumble. They never do.
They never do.
WWE is going to bring in Hurricane Helms again.
Even if they're scheduled to come back, a lot of times they're ruining and bring them back like the next night on Raw.
Yeah. I mean, they ruined it with John Morrison. Like, why the hell did you bring him back? Oh, I'm Mrs. He's in here. You can't talk to him.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you bring back John Morrison, WWE. What are you doing? That was dumb. I would have saved him for Royal Rumble, which is predictable, but at least he would have gotten a nice little pop.
So Impact Wrestling for the first time on pay-per-view in 2020, for the first time in a couple months. It's a match they've been actually hyping up for a while. Tessa Blanchard versus Sami Callihan, an intergender match for their world title. I definitely don't see Tessa Blanchard losing this. I think it'd be good for Impact Wrestling, actually, if she lost this, because it seems a little too predictable that she's going to obviously win this match and kind of, the Becky Lynch, the WrestleMania effect, where it's always the person you expect to be holding the belt with the fireworks going off and, climbing the mountain and reaching all the,
I got to ask you
for
this.
Everybody winning the belt.
Ken Shamrock? Really? Ken Shamrock?
He was at the last pay-per-view as well.
Really?
And here he is again.
Retire. Ken, you're like 60. Maybe 70. I don't even know this one.
No, he's not 70, but yes.
He's old. He's old.
Ken Shamrock versus Madman Fulton. I'm not sure who that is, but here's a match you could look forward to. Moose versus Rhino.
I like Moose. Moose is a former Syracuse offensive lineman, so I always root for Moose. Hopefully he'll be on the radar of WWE sooner rather than later.
Brian Cage versus RVD. I love seeing RVD in action still to this day.
Yeah.
RVD doing his own thing. He's one of those, like the Kenny Omegas of the world that he can't be bought out because obviously he's in Impact Wrestling. He could easily be, maybe not WWE, but he could easily be somebody that AEW would want to.
Oh, for sure. I think that would be a name to watch out for. Maybe he goes to AEW at some point.
And Eddie Edwards versus Michael Elgin in a Call Your Shot trophy match. I'm not sure what that is, but either way, those are two good competitors. Eddie Edwards is a great competitor. Michael Elgin, we've seen him do some awesome stuff in New Japan Wrestling in the past. So overall, I mean, ODB's on the card. Forget about her. She's an Impact original. ODB. She's fighting a three-way for the Knockouts Championship. Here's the thing, too, with Tessa Blanchard fighting for the Impact World Championship. Does that take away from their women's championship? If like Becky Lynch was fighting in the main event for a World Championship match, would you think that would take away from the women's match itself?
No, not really. I don't think it does. I mean, I think it's just a cool gimmick. It'll get people talking. One last note: Mercedes Martinez. She is making her. She's going to be. She's transitioning over to WWE. She's in the Performance Center. I think she just came in this month. It's funny because she was at the AEW Battle Royale not too long ago. So it's funny that she's making the transition from being on the AEW pay-per-view to over to WWE. She's a hell of a wrestler. She was at the Mae Young Classic. I think she wrestled Nikki Cross, I think it was. So it'd be good to see her. I mean, she's 39 years old, so we'll see how many years she's got left in the tank. Hopefully she'll do well. She's done well in Ring of Honor and everywhere she's went.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the show. The Royal Rumble card is starting to fill out a little bit. We'll see if there's any other news in the world of AEW. They had their big show this past week in Memphis. Jerry Lawler was actually invited to go, but obviously couldn't under his WWE obligations. But kind of a cool gimmick, the Memphis history of wrestling in Memphis. It was actually south of Memphis where the show took place in the South Haven, Mississippi area, which is about 20 minutes south. But either way, AEW announced they're coming to Canada. So I'm curious where that'll be, if anywhere close here to Syracuse. And then pretty soon in March, they're going to be in Newark, New Jersey at the Prudential Center, home of the Devils and Seton Hall Pirates, and former home of the Nets for a minute. So
short drive, too.
Not that far of a drive there. Not that far of a drive, maybe, depending on where they go in Canada. AEW continuing to stay steady when it comes to the ratings this past week.
Yeah.
So moving into 2020, staying steady. We'll keep an eye on AEW, see if that stays steady, what's going on there as they eye their next pay-per-view event in February. But either way, join us next week for Brandon the Icebreaker Clements, myself at K-Rock Jared. This has been the first of the New Year's edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. See you next week.
Come here.